Hello, and welcome to Booked Solid, New Canaan Library's podcast for adventurous readers across all genres. I'm your host, Kathleen, a collections librarian.
And I'm your host, James, a reference and instruction librarian.
And today we are discussing our Summer Reading Roundup for 2026.
Yes, we are doing this in partnership with the New Canaan Library Adult Summer Reading Challenge. This year, Adult Summer Reading consists of 10 fun challenges to help you kickstart your summer reading. There's only one rule for the Summer Reading Challenge, and that is that you can only submit one book per challenge. No double dipping. That being said, not everything is a reading challenge this year. One of our challenges is to attend a program at the library, and we'll have special summer reading programs planned throughout the summer, so keep an eye on our newsletters in case if any of those catch your eye. You can register for the challenge and track your progress online. To learn how to do more about that, you can either visit our website, newcanaanlibrary.org, or feel free to stop by the reference desk on the top floor, and we'll be more than happy to help you get started. And you'll definitely want to sign up this year, because for this year, every challenge you finish earns you a digital entry into our summer giveaway series. We're giving away gift cards throughout the summer, plus one lucky reader will walk away with our epic grand prize, a single-use golden ticket that lets you skip the hold line on any print book for the rest of 2026. So, if this sounds like something you're interested in, Adult Summer Reading starts on June 21st, so it's already started by the time you're listening to this episode, and it ends on August 31st. So be sure to register and get in all of your challenges done by that time. On this episode, we'll be recommending books that meet 5 of the 9 book-related challenges. If you want to use any of the recommendations we make today for the Visit a Librarian challenge, feel free to do so. That is a challenge that basically is read a book recommended by a librarian, so all of these books will work. But remember, no double dipping. You can't use it for whatever category we're giving you, and also the Visit a Librarian, it's one or the other. The other challenges that we're not kind of giving recommendations for are either pretty easy, like reading an ebook or an e-audio book, but we will mention if we have them available in ebook or e-audio book, or to like read a book from your favorite genre. So, there's also another one that we're not talking about, which is reading a book from one of our displays, which you kind of got to see the library to visit our displays. That being said, we're going to get started. Kathleen, why don't you get us started with the first challenge pick?
So the first book I'm going to recommend is for the Lifelong Learning Badge. So the prompt for this is that you would read a nonfiction book. So as James mentioned, we do have these books in our physical collection to check out, but I'm also going to try to mention anytime we have an ebook or an e-audio book as well. So for this one, I wanted to point out that we have this as an e-audio on Hoopla and Libby. So I first heard about this book that I wanted to recommend, Born in Flames, The Business of Arson and the Remaking of the American City by Bench Ansfield, when it was shortlisted for the Pulitzer this past year. I really enjoy books about New York City from any era, and so I thought this one sounded really fascinating. It's a good read if you like nonfiction that is rooted in history, although it also has some shades of true crime as well. So this book is focusing on the arson wave of the 1970s. It details the trajectory from being attributed to residents to the revelation of its real cause, which was often landlords seeking insurance payouts. This trend was widespread across the country, but perhaps the most infamous site of these fires was the Bronx, as in the well-known phrase, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx is burning." So this book focuses on that pretty specifically. There are just so many interesting details here, and the book does such a great job of exploring the elements that conspired to make arson for profit such a popular solution, as well as the ways in which communities organize to reclaim their neighborhoods. So if you like a deep dive into a particular moment in time, I think this is a really great read. I definitely learned a lot. I felt like I had a much richer understanding of something I'd heard of before, but didn't really know much about. And so it's just really fascinating, and I absolutely recommend it.
That sounds interesting. Anywhere in the book does it say what happened when the tenants would catch their landlords trying to set fire to their homes while they were still inside of them?
I think you should read the book to find out, but they definitely were not happy.
No, that's crazy. That just sounds crazy to me, that whole situation. And I had no idea that was the origin of that phrase.
Yeah, there was just so much that I was like, I guess I've sort of heard about this, but I didn't really know much of anything. So this was very eye-opening and very fascinating, like a really compelling read.
Yeah, I'll definitely read it. So my choice for this badge is Neptune's Fortune by Julian Sancton. Neptune's Fortune is about the loss and rediscovery of the San Jose, which was a Spanish treasure galleon that sank off the coast of Colombia in 1708. What makes it notable is the fact that it sank with about $17 billion worth of gold, jewels, and other treasures on board. So everybody really wanted to know where this thing sank because based on just record keeping and misinformation, the actual location of its sinking was lost for quite some time. The book explains how the ship was lost and then moves on to cover the life of one Roger Dooley, who was the man who discovered the wreck in 2015, 307 years after it had sunk. Dooley's obsession with finding the San Jose and the unlikely events that led him to becoming the first Cuban maritime archaeologist, as well as his struggle with pushing back against accusations of treasure hunting versus archaeology, and then the resulting legal battles that the discovery of the San Jose and its treasure launch, makes this a really fascinating read. If you're interested in underwater archaeology or the culture around like treasure recovery and wreck finding, this is definitely a book you want to pick up. I was shocked reading this book how invested I became in just learning about Roger Dooley and his life. His life is just fascinating to me. He went from being an American born in New Jersey to being part of like the Cuban government's state-sanctioned underwater treasure recovery. Like he was
Wow.
the chief archaeologist of that entire organization at some point. A fascinating man and a fascinating story.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I feel like it's everyone's childhood dream to find like sunken treasure.
Yeah.
So absolutely, like this is some real wish fulfillment
Yeah.
to read that and
Yeah.
be like, what would that be like?
Well, what the book basically describes is like you'll find the treasure and then 5 different countries will jump on you and be like, actually, that's all mine, that's all mine, that's all mine, that's our treasure that was stolen from our people, and then it gets buried in lawsuits for, next decade or so.
So less exciting than I think.
A lot more exciting if you're into legal thrillers at the end of the day.
Okay. All right. So for our next prompt, I'm going to do the grab a novel badge, and this is just a really simple prompt: read a fiction book. And so the book I picked for this one was Midnight Timetable by Bora Chung, translated by Anton Her. And I picked this book up for a few reasons, but above all, I wanted to recommend it just because it's so much fun. So first of all, it's a book in translation. It was originally published in Korean, set in Korea. It takes place in this weird institute that houses cursed objects, which I think is such a cool concept. But the stories also branch into the wider world, so you get a nice sense of like Korean culture as well. I feel like the summer is such a great time for like spooky campfire type stories. So this book absolutely fits the bill. You have these really indelible images of like a staircase up to a floor that doesn't exist, or a ghost cat that follows the workers on their rounds as they check the doors to all the haunted rooms and make sure that they're staying locked. It's actually a book of linked short stories, so it's something you can dip in and out of really easily. All the stories are very eerie and unsettling, but they're not really terrifying. So if you have a limited tolerance for horror, I think you could still appreciate it. Overall, I just think it's a great read. If you're looking, for like this immersive atmosphere, and it has some scary short stories in there that really will stick with you.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. My pick for this badge is Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. This, you've probably heard of this. It won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction this year, and it is a brutal, vicious, supernatural horror thriller, like literary supernatural horror thriller, that follows a squad of American soldiers in the trenches of World War I who get sent on a mission to put a stop to whoever it is that is shrieking up a storm in no man's land. The commander of their squad basically says, go kill that guy because they're making us all go crazy with their screaming. So they're expecting to find a wounded man or maybe a civilian who's been caught up in this whole mess. What they instead find appears to be an angel tangled in barbed wire, glowing brightly, screaming her head off. They decide to try and rescue the angel, though things begin to fall apart. First, when the blinding beam of light that they discover the angel sometimes emits draws incoming artillery fire.
Oh, no.
And later, when the men in the squad begin to get the idea that maybe the angel can grant wishes. It's beautifully written. It's full of just the depths of despair, trauma. There's hope and non-stop forward motion in this here. The characters are so well wrought, and there's so much interesting supernatural horror and wonder that goes on through this entire book. And it's a short book too, so you can read it pretty quickly. But I think one of the most impressive things is the way that The author's writing style turned the whole experience into what feels like a single shot of a movie, like a movie that was taken in a single shot. It just keeps going on and on and on. It's like one unbroken sentence on one unbroken thought without being too kind of distracting. A lot of times you'll read books that, like the literary books specifically, that have like a literary device that they're playing with, and it can be a little distracting or it can take away from the story. This never does. It lasts just long enough that it doesn't wear out its welcome, and it feels propulsive and kinetic, and it's balancing so many things at once. It's a great read. Definitely something I highly recommend.
Nice. Yeah, I was interested in this one, but I was a little scared off by the one unbroken sentence sort of thing.
Yeah, I was also a little wary, but then I started reading it. I actually read it as an ebook because it's available on Hoopla at the moment as an ebook, and I was greatly entertained.
Great. I'll have to check that one out. All right, so our next prompt is new to you, and this is read a book published in the last 6 months. So the book I picked for this was Go Gentle by Maria Semple. This is available on Libby as an ebook and an e-audio. So at first I wasn't sure I wanted to recommend this book because it was recently chosen for Oprah's book club, and I figured everyone must have already heard about it. But then I realized it's not my fault that Oprah and I both have taste. And it's still worth recommending in case you missed it. This came out in April, and it was one of the books I was most excited about being released this year. Maria Semple is probably best known for Where Do You Go, Bernadette? And she used to be a TV comedy writer, so she writes these very funny, clever books. So this book has a great setup. It's about a woman named Adora Hazard, who is a surprisingly successful Stoic philosopher. She's somewhat recently divorced. She now lives on the same floor of a historic New York building with several other like-minded women in what she refers to as a coven. So it's sort of like a communal living situation. They'll share like a loaf of bread or something because they can't eat the whole thing in a week. She has a teen daughter who's nothing like her and a job tutoring the twin sons of this ridiculously wealthy family. Everything in her life is pretty comfortable, but you get these little hints of trauma in her past. And then everything goes off the rails and she has to confront that. So suddenly you have this story that might be about an art heist or an arms deal. And there's also this mysterious new man in Adora's life who might be a love interest or maybe her downfall. It's a very fun, compulsively readable book, but it's also not afraid to go to some dark places and confront our societal ills. For me, it really fits that bill of like an intellectual beach read. It's engaging with some serious issues and ideas, but it does so in a really funny, really readable way.
Yeah, I think intellectual beach reads are an important part of the whole summer reading experience.
Okay.
You see people reading all the James Pattersons and everything on the beach, all the action thrillers, and you're just like, oh, I like something a little bit meatier, but I don't have to really spend all day thinking about it, and that sounds maybe like the book that fits the bill for sure. For my book that was published in the last 6 months, I chose The Unicorn Hunters by Catherine Arden. This is a historical fantasy about Anne of Brittany, who was only a child when her royal father died during a disastrous military campaign against invading French forces. Now, as a young woman, it appears that she has few options left to her as the sovereign of an occupied country, save to marry King Charles of France, and thus cede her title and country to the enemy. But Anne isn't giving up without a fight, and so she hatches a plan to secretly wed Charles's most powerful rival and thus enter into an alliance that would prevent France from making good its claims on her homeland. To pull off this stealth wedding while under the watchful magical eyes of the French crown's diviners, she plans a unicorn hunt in an ancient forest that defies all attempts at magical spycraft. Then, of course, she accidentally stumbles across an actual unicorn and everything gets a lot more complicated. This is a great fantasy novel about a historical figure who is a fascinating woman in and of her own right. And it doesn't skimp out on the political maneuvering of kind of the situation that she's found herself in, or the kind of incredible, fantastical elements that get woven into the story as magic becomes more and more prevalent after the finding of the unicorn. So there's a really careful balancing act that's being done here, and I think that Catherine Arden does it so masterfully that it's an incredible experience to read.
Nice. I'd like to say that I was like, oh yeah, political intrigue, but honestly, when you're describing it, I'm like, but where are the unicorns? So that was, the unicorns come in, I'm like, all right, now I'm sold. That sounds cool. All right, so our next badge is Summer State of Mind. So pretty self-explanatory. This is a book that takes place during the summer. Now, this is something that we both struggled with a little bit.
Yes, extremely so.
And it's because I think when you think about books set in the summer, you usually think about maybe a summer romance or maybe a book set like, maybe Nantucket or something.
Martha's Vineyard, A Beautiful Beach House. We all know those books, for sure.
And we don't really read those books.
Mm-mm.
And, I think they're easy to find. So we wanted to think of something where if you're looking for something a little out of the box, or, maybe these are things that you don't normally read, but they just sound good. We wanted to find something different that's set in the summer. So for my book, I chose 5 Weeks in the Country by Francine Prose. And we have the ebook on Libby, so you can also read it that way. In this book, the 5 weeks of the title do take place over the summer, but it's historical fiction. So that summer in question is actually 1857. The setting is Charles Dickens' home at Gad's Hill in the countryside outside London. When I first heard the premise of this novel, I knew I had to pick it up. Because this is not just any story about Dickens' life. This is about the time the classic fairy tale author Hans Christian Andersen came to visit, and he would not leave. So the structure of this book is really interesting because you get this almost like Rashomon-style storytelling with 3 different perspectives. First, it's narrated by the Dickens children, then Charles Dickens himself, and then finally Hans Christian Andersen. So when Andersen shows up at their house, he can't really speak English very well, so he's always like miming what he wants to communicate, and the whole family just finds him super weird. This would be enough of a problem, but then there are these 2 other factors further complicating matters. The first is that British newspapers are warning of an approaching comet that might be on a collision course with the Earth. The second is that Charles Dickens, now in his mid-40s and married with 9 children, has fallen in love with an 18-year-old actress.
Oh.
So the premise of this book with like the unwanted house guest who can't take a hint, that sounded so funny to me. But I was really caught off guard by how emotionally devastating the story could get.
No.
Much like in a Dickens novel, you really get that mix of humor and pathos. So it's not a light summer read, but if you're interested in fascinating character studies, it absolutely delivers. Although you'll probably never be able to think of Charles Dickens or Hans Christian Andersen the same way again.
Yeah, I think I kind of have to pick this up now. You had me at the he won't leave, and then you got me with a comet at that point too. Like, I don't know what. So for my book for the summer state of mind, it is Diavola by Jennifer Thorne. This is horror. This is a funny, dark horror book. It's about the annual Pace family destination vacation, which goes wrong when the idyllic Italian summer getaway that they have planned at a beautiful villa that they've rented turns into a personal nightmare for Anna Pace, who is the black sheep of the family, when the malign spirit that lives within this villa begins to take an interest in her. This is annoying to Anna because the family already is on her case for basically every chore she's ever made in her entire life, and now there's a ghost that seems determined to further isolate Anna from her dysfunctional family, at which point things start to come apart very quickly for everybody involved. This is a extremely darkly funny book about a stubborn family who doesn't want to admit that there's anything wrong with either the situation they're in or the people in the family outside of Anna who they're always blaming for everything. The struggle on being on the outs with your family, and of course, a scary ghost that is ontologically evil while also doing some admittedly incredibly funny things to the whole family. Pulling a bunch of pranks, essentially, while also trying to do some not-so-funny things. It's perfect poolside summer reading for people who are tired of, summer romance or vacation novels, doing a little break from that stuff. It's a little darker, but it's also still pretty funny. There's one of my favorite parts in this book. There's a moment where the ghost gets taken on a trip that the ghost did not expect, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever read when the ghost makes itself known that it does not want to be where it is. So funny.
Yeah, I actually listened to the e-audio of this one, and it's a lot of fun. And I think the thing that you've pointed out that is so true and that is so interesting is that it is both really funny and extremely scary.
Yeah.
Like, there were actually these moments that I was like, oh no, like really horrified.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think it captures something that everyone can relate to, which is some awkward family experiences.
If you've ever dreaded a family vacation, this book is for you.
All right, and we're at our last category. This one is Better Late Than Never, and the prompt is read a book you've been meaning to get to. So the book I picked for this one is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. This is also available on e-audio on Hoopla and Libby, so you can listen to it that way. So S.A. Cosby has become a really celebrated crime writer, but I didn't get a chance to read any of his books until this year, so I'm a little behind. I think it's a really great time to get into him, though, because this book, which originally came out in 2023, is getting a Netflix miniseries adaptation soon. So I'd imagine it's going to get even more popular and even more readers in the future. This is a great novel to pick up if you like mysteries and thrillers and you don't mind if they're very dark. Because the plot of this book is heavy. It's about Titus Crown, who is the first black sheriff in the history of his hometown in rural Virginia. He's come back home after a traumatic event that occurred while he was an FBI agent, and he's assuming that this job is going to be a lot less high stress. It is not. Immediately, he's met with a racist response to his becoming sheriff, and he has to constantly navigate the charged political climate, which includes a far-right group that wants to hold a parade in celebration of the town's Confederate history. On top of this, there's a shooting of a beloved school teacher by one of his former students, and this reveals a much darker conspiracy that has secretly been going on for years. There is, in fact, a serial killer in Titus's county that has been hiding in plain sight, and Titus must uncover who it is before they claim another victim. What really elevated this book for me is S.A. Cosby's writing. I think the premise is really interesting and exciting, but it was the way he described his characters that made it such a standout thriller to me. As I said, I listened to the e-audiobook, and I thought the narrator just did such a great job as well. It was really a pleasure to listen to. I will admit, I did have to take a break a few times because it was so dark, so you've been warned. But if you like a thriller that really pays attention to language and builds a compelling, fully realized world, this is a great one to pick up. And I'm really curious to see how the TV show turns out.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So for my pick for the Better Late Than Never category, I chose Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. And the reason why I chose this is because I have multiple to-be-read piles in my home. I have one on my bedside table, one on my desk, but I also have one at work, and it is the classic section that is right across from the reference desk. So every time I come to work, I just look at all these books that I've meant to read the whole time. And so eventually I couldn't take it anymore, and I took this off the shelf, and I started to give it a read just the other week or so. And let me tell you, I think this book is most well known to people as being the inspiration behind Blade Runner, the Blade Runner films. And so as someone who's seen all those films, I kind of thought I had an idea of what would be in this book. I did not. Oh. I absolutely did not. I was not ready for this book. It is about a bounty hunter named Rick Deckard, whose job is to hunt down unauthorized humanoid androids that are living in what is basically a ruined Earth in the far-flung apocalyptic future of 2021. 5 years ago. The world building and interesting future technologies and society that Philip K. Dick imagined for this book completely took me by surprise. The kind of machines and things that he's imagined, like a device that lets you dial to hyper-specific emotions such as appreciation for your husband or a general feeling of well-being or wanting to use the dial on the machine that you're using right now, to a society that is obsessed with owning living animals like a possum or a goat or a sheep as just a huge symbol of status. There's just so much going on here that is not touched upon at all in those movies that people have seen and know this from. So when I was reading it, I was just constantly surprised and delighted about all of the weird stuff that was just getting thrown my way. If you have any interest at all in like classic science fiction, I would highly recommend just giving this a read, especially if you kind of think you know what's in there, because again, there's so much fun stuff in there.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds good. I will admit, I am one of those people who's only seen Blade Runner and figured, yeah, I've got the gist of it.
Yeah, I thought that same way. I opened it up. The first thing is Deckard and his wife being like, we have to dial on the machine that lets us choose what emotions we feel. And I was like, what? What's happening?
All right. So those are our recommendations, and I hope all of our listeners found something that sounded interesting to them. As James mentioned, you can sign up for the summer reading program now. It's live now. Get set up on Beanstack and start recording all of the books you've read so that you are eligible to win that golden ticket.
Yes, I wish you the best of luck, listeners, in your reading journey. And we will be taking the rest of the summer off for the podcast, I believe, right, Kathleen?
We are going to be taking our summer hiatus, but we'll be back in September with season 8.
Wow.
Hard to believe. All right. Well, until September, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.